Good afternoon, Crime Crunchies. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I am Courtney C., your host and a 27-year veteran of the media. I am switching gears. I've been doing Nancy Guthrie since the very beginning, and there's just not a whole lot of updates going on right now. I am going to be covering today the very interesting disappearance of Lynette Hooker in the Bahamas. It's still a bit of a mystery, and it seems to be a little sticky with Mr. Hooker. He is in, I think that they have him in custody at this time, although from what I understand in the Bahamas, being in custody is not the same as being arrested, but we'll see. It's been, I think, 9 days since this fiasco began. I believe April 3rd is when Brian and Lynette were having dinner and then got in the dinghy the morning of April 4th. And then the rest is where we're at. So today I would like to cover something that we had with the Nancy Guthrie case that I thought was really helpful, and that is a timeline. So I've put together a timeline and a little background of the story, and we're going to look at some articles together. So let me share my screen. While I'm doing that, please make sure that you like, subscribe, share, jump around, hit the ground, shake your booty, okay? Let's do it. All right, so let's look at the slideshow I've put together, and then we're going to go into the timeline. So let's look at the, actually, let me switch this over. Hold on. All right. Yeah, this was the right one. Bear with me. Talk amongst yourself. Okay, so let's look at what happened, okay? Lynette Hooker, 55, disappeared near the Abaco Islands near the Bahamas, traveling by dinghy at night with her husband, Brian Hooker. The claim by Brian Hooker is that she fell overboard in dark, rough conditions. Basically, that the boat was choppy, the water was choppy, the boat was bumpy, and that Lynette was bounced out of the boat. She happened to have the boat key, which then disabled the engine. Brian attempted to rescue her, but drifted and paddled for hours. He reached land and reported her missing. The husband was arrested, although he's in custody in the Bahamas. Authorities cite probable cause and inconsistencies in his story. No formal charges yet. Charges are under consideration still, and we're going to take a look at a statement made by his attorney. The search status right now is it's shifted from rescue to recovery. It's involved the Bahamian authorities and U.S. Coast Guard. And the only thing that they found is a floating cushion, although I did see an interview of Lynette's mother, and supposedly they found Lynette's Apple Watch. Conflicting statements about the events have been made by Brian. The questions in the case are there's no life jackets, there's timeline gaps. Brian described the night as a cascade of failures. Family raised concerns about prior abuse. Allegations include a choking incident with Lynette and Brian's stepdaughter. Threats. So far, nothing had been proven in court about the domestic violence. And the contributing factors, the conditions described were dangerous, nighttime, rough seas, no moonlight, and possible alcohol involvement. Brian and Lynette were known to be drinkers. So she's still missing. Brian remains detained. Let's take a look now at this timeline. I'll put this on slideshow. So, overview of events leading to Lynette Hooker's disappearance, April 4th through 5th. I think I had that wrong. I think I mentioned April 3rd through 4th, but April 4th through 5th is the night of the disappearance. Evening departure from shore at 7:30 p.m. They left Hopetown in a small dinghy heading to anchored sailboat near Elbow Cay. I'm not sure, but it sounded to me like the boat was moored or anchored like 2 miles away, and I think that that sounds long to me. I'm not a boater, so I'm not exactly sure what typically happens, but that seems really far away in my common sense brain. Okay, maybe that's incorrect, but I don't know. We'll continue on. Dark, windy, rough water, limited visibility. Lynette fell from dinghy. Key details: had boats and lanyard. Attempted rescue. Let's see. I was hoping that I had the time frame. Okay, so that's during the night. All right, let me go back. She was either swept by currents or swimming toward the boat, but we're not sure yet. Brian says that he was in a disabled dinghy with no engine power because she had the key. He was unable to maneuver because there were no oars because it was engine powered. He says he drifted and paddled for hours, carried by wind and current, and it was described as a night of cascade of failures. They left too late. They had improper anchoring. I don't know if that was at the yacht, and they had no life jackets on board, but apparently he says he threw one to her. This is very confusing. So at 4 a.m., it was reported that he reached the Marsh Harbor or Marsh Bay, and that's where he reported Lynette missing and that she was still in the water at 4 a.m. The police were notified at 5 a.m. Authorities contacted, police began response and took statement. So variations account is what Lynette did. She swept away versus swimming, and apparently she was a very strong swimmer. The keys issues, why, if she's not driving, and this is something her daughter has mentioned, that Brian would drive the dinghy. So why would she have the key? That just seems really weird. And the only thing we know about the key is what Brian has said, that she had the key. How do we know that? I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking if he could easily have taken the key and just thrown it in the water. Everyone's like, well, she had the key. She fell overboard with the key in her pocket. Again, this is just what Brian said. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm thinking that it looks suspicious that if Brian could easily have just had the keys, and after his anger or whatever happened with Lynette happened, he could easily have pulled the key to get him, some sort of an alibi. I'm not falling for her having the key. That seems to be a major soundbite in the story, but I think that it's too convenient, and we only know what Brian knows or what Brian has said. All right. So it looks like we don't have a whole detail of this happened, but it was late the night of the 4th when they left the shore. At 7:30 p.m. is when it happened on the 4th, that they left Hopetown in a small dinghy. And then the next morning at 4 a.m. is when he reached Marsh Harbor. And then at 5 a.m. is when he started notifying police. Okay. So again, they had a history of drinking. There was some domestic violence that has been stated by the daughter and the mother. These are people who would have firsthand knowledge of what happened. I wanted to see if there were some maps online, and I did find in websleuths.com, somebody made a map. Looks like maybe they had been there before. But there's a yellow line here. I don't know if I can make this bigger. Let's see if this makes it bigger. Kind of bigger. The yellow line is the Abaco Inn. And let me see if, let's see. Let me go back here. I want to make sure that I state the right things when I'm looking at this. So, and I have done on at least one prior case, and this is Red House, a member of Web Sleuths. They said, I'm going to try and merge our mapping efforts as there may be a story. Number one, this is like the map I posted showing how close to Abaco Inn is with the dinghy dock where my yellow line starts. Recall, I have been there to Aunt Pat's Bay where the hooker's yacht was moored anchored. The Sea of Abaco is shallow and calm. So I guess Aunt Pat's Bay is where the yacht was moored. Okay. Huh. Interesting. So they had to dinghy from the Abaco Inn all the way around. That does seem like a bit of a distance. And what they need to find out is and apparently the hookers had been here before. What they need to find out from GPS, if they can, is where the hookers moored previously, because if they can show that the boat was moored an extra far distance away this time, then that could indicate some premeditation. Let me make this bigger for you guys. Let's see if I can do that. Okay. So that would be very interesting to see if they moored differently this time than they have in the past. Okay. Look at how close to the shore they likely traveled at twilight by dinghy from Abaco Inn back to their yacht. And this is my number one question. And again, I don't know anything about yachting, sailing, whatnot. I'm terrified to swim in the ocean. I don't like sharks, but I would imagine that if they're this close to shore and she's being swept away, that they're going to go in the same direction, you know? And I don't know why they would be separated, because if his boat was not running, wouldn't they go in the same direction? That just seems odd to me, that they would be together. And if there were no life jackets, how did he says he threw her a life jacket in one of his voice messages, which the whole thing is weird. He's over explaining different things. Okay, so here's another image from on this website, Web Sleuths, a wider view of that mapped area, including Marsh Harbor, where BH, Brian Hooker, allegedly came ashore and asked for help at 4 a.m. It is possible that the prevailing wind may have pushed the tiny dinghy from Elbow Cay to Marsh Harbor. Maybe because it was above the water, the winds pushed it. Then they continue. But in my opinion, I truly wonder for that transit to occur under wind and or paddle power, whether it could take 8 hours. I mean, this does look like a really far distance. It just seems weird. I don't know. And I don't know how, the only thing I could think is if the dinghy's above the water, sitting on the water, that maybe there was more chance for the wind to take the dinghy and her body's underwater with a current. Okay, and so here's another map. It says, and this is an even wider angle, striving to match Otto's wide angle view of Great Abaco Island and Elbow Cay. I mean, this is quite a bit of distance. And I mean, if he was genuinely paddling, I don't know. I mean, here's Hopetown is this little island here, but if he lost her up here, I don't know. It just, the whole thing seems weird. And like I said, if she ended up with the key, I would imagine that you have to put the key in order for the engine to run. And if she had the key, how did she have the key if she wasn't sitting right next to the engine and driving it? Why would she grab the key if she's being bounced out? If she's being bounced out, it's so fast your body can't react and do anything. And if it needed a key to run and it's in her pocket, that doesn't make sense. So there are reports that he gets really mean when he drinks. Okay. And that there are pictures, there's evidence of DV and bruises that Lynette has taken and documented over the years She definitely was not strong enough and or ready to leave him because she was given a lot of opportunities to do so by her mother. Her mother offered to let her come and stay, but she went back every time. Okay, it's the typical situation, and she kept going back and kept going back, and her mother said that she knew that it was eventually that she wasn't going to come back, that it was very high possibility that one day she would just be gone, and here she is. So they're not surprised. I'm sure that they're shocked and they're disappointed and they're traumatized by this, but I don't know that it's a big shock that this whole thing, or surprised that this has happened. All right, so here's a map of some wind currents. Here's at Auto Summary wind current map. The green circle on their map roughly correlates with my yellow red marks on the Google snips above, but hopefully this puts together the detailed locations with Auto's data. And I'm wondering if this isn't Hope Island or Hope Town. Let's see what that looks like. I'm not sure what this is, but it looks like currents are going up. I don't know. I'm assuming north. Okay, currents are going north. Wind is going west. We're just going to use a regular compass direction. The boat direction is like northwest, and the body direction is north with the currents. So I guess maybe that does make sense, that with her body underwater, it would go with the current and the boat would go with the wind direction. Let me just scroll down here and see if there was anything else. Okay. So that's very interesting. Here is, let's look at some video right now. Husband of missing mom, Lynette Hooker, reveals grave mistake he made in phone call. Can't really explain it. So let's take a look at this.
After the missing mom's American boater missing in the...
Whoopsie. No, don't do that.
After reportedly falling overboard on a small dinghy and slipping out of sight into the sea. But an investigation by Bahamas police has complicated the case after the missing mom's boating buddy husband was arrested in connection with her disappearance. What do we know about Lynette Hooker, the TikTok boating mom who allegedly plunged into the sea? On April 4th, Lynette and Brian Hooker embarked on a roughly 2.5-mile trip from Hopetown to Elbow Cay in the Bahamas on their 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy. 55-year-old Lynette and 59-year-old boating hubby Brian were anything but amateur boaters. The pair had documented their yachting excursions online for the past 3 years under the amusing moniker, the Sailing Hookers. TikTok videos posted on their account capture the couple sailing in crystal clear waters, taking in the views of beautiful white sand beaches, and even sailing next to dolphins. But despite the couple's supposed prowess on the high seas, tragedy struck on their Bahamas excursion when, according to the Royal Bahamas Police Force, Lynette reportedly tumbled overboard when trying to get back to their yacht named the Soulmate. According to Bahamian authorities, Lynette was holding the boat key when she toppled overboard that Saturday night, which caused the dinghy's engine to cut off. Brian told police he lost sight of his wife after strong currents swept her out to sea. Brian paddled to the Marsh Harbor boatyard, arriving at around 4 a.m. the next day to report his wife missing, which sparked a desperate search and rescue mission. 4 days after the tragic disappearance, Brian broke his silence in a Facebook post, writing, "I am heartbroken over the recent boat accident in unpredictable seas and high winds that caused my beloved Lynette to fall from our small dinghy near Elbow Cay in the Bahamas. Despite desperate attempts to reach her, the winds and currents drove us further apart. We continue to search for her, and that is my sole focus." But the disappearance case took a turn when Lynette's daughter and Brian's stepdaughter, Carly Ellsworth, went on a media spree, claiming she believes there's more to Brian's story. In a Fox News interview, Ellsworth alleged that Brian displayed volatile behavior against his boat-loving spouse and that there was a, quote, history of him choking her out and threatening to throw her overboard. Ellsworth shared similar suspicions about her stepfather's story with an on-camera interview with CBS News.
from what I've heard from my grandma, their relationship has been a lot of fighting and drinking lately. For one, I don't understand how she got the key. Brian's always driving, so he basically is in charge of the key. So the fact that my mom had it doesn't make any sense.
A source close to the family claimed to the Daily Mail that Brian didn't inform Ellsworth about her mother's disappearance until around 24 hours after the tragedy. The boating beau also left a voicemail for Ellsworth to let her know searchers had found the flotation device he allegedly threw to Lynette when she was in the water. In an interview with Fox and Friends, Ellsworth said she believes her stepfather, whom she has known her entire life, is working through unprocessed anger.
I believe he has a bunch of anger he hasn't processed. I've seen him choke out one of his daughters before, and we had to go to court for that. And I was only in 3rd grade. So he's just repeating patterns.
In a statement to the Daily Beast, Brian denied Ellsworth's accusations and denied any further comments to the press. On April 8th, Brian was named a suspect and taken into custody by Bahamian cops in connection to Lynette's shocking disappearance. According to CNN, Terrell Butler, Brian's attorney, confirmed the arrest and said he, quote, categorically and unequivocally denies any wrongdoing. A U.S. Coast Guard official also confirmed to NBC News that a criminal investigation into Lynette's disappearance has been opened, but refused to share any further details. Butler is also now claiming that police in the Bahamas may have tricked Brian into talking to them for 3 hours before arresting him. Butler told TMZ that police originally told Brian that he was not a suspect and said they needed, quote, some assistance in his wife's case. Brian reportedly told the police that he had an attorney, but didn't call for one, as he cooperated with investigators for over 3 hours. Butler said no charges have been filed against her client. The search for Lynette continues, and Ellsworth told WXYZ that she's holding out for news about her mom.
The longer it goes on, the more doubt I have they'll find her. I think they'll find her at the bottom of the ocean, but because I don't think you can tread water for that long, I'm just hoping they find her at least so I can know like what happened and get some closure.
Yeah, so it looks to me like, I mean, he could be the unluckiest SOB on the planet. Come on, Mr. Thing. But it doesn't look likely. To me, I mean, if the guy has a history of this, then there's very little room to think that especially if he was drinking, that something did not happen. And it just doesn't look very good for him. And the fact that he waited 24 hours to call the daughter is it's what is it? It's consciousness of guilt. Okay. Consciousness of guilt is where you do things or you act a certain way. And the fact that in his Facebook post, he's giving a lot of information. Let's just look through this. Let's just think through this. We know that there was a video or a voice message to the stepdaughter that we just saw interviewed. And in that voice message, he says, you know, hi, hon, or whatever. And I'm plagiarizing or paraphrasing here. Okay. Hi, hon. Basically, they found the life jacket that I threw to your mom after she fell out of the boat. Okay. That whole sentence, if you're in a boat and somebody just falls out and you know you're scared and you're trying to get your so-and-so back and you've thrown a life jacket, you're not going to give an update that replays everything that you did during the moment. You're just going to say they haven't found her yet, they found a life jacket, and then move on with your conversation. You're not going to fill in they found the life jacket that I threw to her as she was falling off the boat. Too many words. What it is it's somebody trying to convince you that they were not involved. Okay. Somebody who's not involved does not need to give so much information explaining why they're not involved because they know they're not involved. And I hope that makes sense. The more words somebody gives explaining how they're not involved shows that they are involved. Okay. And that's just human nature. It's somebody over explaining how they didn't do anything and that mom fell out of the boat. It wasn't me doing anything to her. And again, This whole thing with her and the key and the boat stopping, I think it's bull poopy. I fully expect that they probably have been drinking. He freaked out. He has a history of choking and hitting and all of that stuff. He probably did that to her, realized that he went too far, threw her overboard, and then sat there thinking, okay, how am I going to fix this? Well, I got to get rid of the key, and takes the key out, and then probably literally does go and paddle all night long, because that's going to be how I get out of this. There's no way anybody who's not guilty is going to paddle for 8 hours over to land over there. Okay. They're just there. I'm sure that he had himself convinced that this was the perfect alibi. Okay. But after 24 hours, when he did call the stepdaughter, it was very monotone. You know, hun, mom fell over the boat and they can't find her. Okay, bye, love you, toodles. That's just not normal. I would be freaking out, and I would be reaching out to everybody, probably wanting people to come down and help me look for her. And I'm sure she's fish food at this point, which is a bummer in the ocean. That's why I don't swim in the ocean. All right, so let's look at this one. Lawyer says police likely considering M charge for husband of U.S. woman missing in Bahamas. He definitely denies causing her death, and he's still asked about her and is hopeful that she will be recovered, Brian Hooker's lawyer said Friday. All right, let's watch this.
Brian Hooker is still in police custody and may be charged with murdering his wife,
Murder.
according to his lawyer.
You think they are looking at him for possibly being charged with murder?
Right, based on the fact that they're saying that they believe he caused her harm that resulted in her death. That suggests murder to me.
Attorney Terrell Butler says police questioned her client for more than 3 hours Friday. Hooker says his wife, Lynette, fell from the couple's small dinghy in rough water.
We have no evidence that, or at least we've not been informed of any evidence that any body has been recovered or any information in relation to her death.
The Royal Bahamas Police Force has not commented on these claims.
That was the craziest night drifting out in the Abaco Sea.
Also new, this apparent recording of Brian Hooker describing what happened as his wife went overboard.
She basically just bounced off the dinghy in the middle of a little blow, like 20-some knot winds that popped up. I think she tried to swim back to the sailboat.
Right.
Back to our
2
sailboat,
miles?
which was probably,
dude.
I don't know, 1,000 yards or something.
That's not
Just,
true.
I yelled. I couldn't see her anymore.
NBC News cannot verify the audio's authenticity. Brian Hooker's attorney says she cannot either. Marnie and Blaine Stevenson say they've known the Hookers for more than 2 years and recorded this call with Brian Monday night.
What would you want people to hear most from that call?
The flares. Who saw a flare?
Ooh.
Somebody had to see that.
I grabbed the flares by then. I had 2 flares. And
Interesting.
they didn't see the flares, I guess.
Nearly a week after
I haven't heard
investigators
this call.
believe Lynette Hooker disappeared, the Bahamian military says the search continues by land, air, and sea.
Brian Hooker's lawyer says he even broke down in tears during his interview here yesterday, adding that her client
he must be
denies
telling the truth.
any wrongdoing. That attorney also tells us that police cannot request another extension of Brian Hooker's detention, which means by Monday night, Brian Hooker should either be charged with a crime or set free. Emily?
Okay, Jesse, thanks.
That's,
And a Los Angeles
this
County
gonna
man
be
is
hard.
lucky.
This is going to be difficult because, I mean, truly, it is a bit, he said, she said. Well, she didn't say, but he said, because unless, okay, so it sounds to me like he left a message for his friends that's a lot more detailed than what he even left the stepdaughter. So this is what that tells me, and I haven't researched it yet, but if he left those 2 friends that we just saw, if he left them a more detailed voice message than he left the stepdaughter, that tells me a lot, because he waited 24 hours to phone the stepdaughter. It was very short. It was very monotone. If he called his two friends after that, that tells me he's had more time to figure out what the story is. There's nothing about, this is the first time I've heard about flares going off. This whole what flares? That whole and he said that the yacht was 1,000 feet, but when we're looking at the map, that's not 1,000 feet. They're saying that the boat was anchored by Aunt Pat's Bay, and this is just going off of Web Sleuths. Let me see if I can find. Where was the hooker's yacht moored in the Bahamas? I'll see if I can see if we can. Okay, the yacht owned by Brian and Lynette Hooker, which was moored near Elbow Cay in the Bahamas Abaco Islands during the April 2026, is named the Soulmate. Anchored near Elbow Cay, a popular area in the Abaco Islands, Bahamas. But I've heard it was 2 miles away, and then this map shows that it was 2.5 miles away. And I mean, that looks pretty far when you're looking at these maps together. So I can see why the Bahamian police would think that Brian's statements aren't adding up, because they're going to know where the boat was moored. And if he's saying that this is only 1,000 feet from where she was, then it was only 1,000 feet, because it's about where he's saying that he lost her. It's right around this corner from what this person has put this map together here. And then it would only be 1,000. That does not add up. They're saying this is about 2 miles where the boat was moored. And like I mentioned before, they need to see where they moored the boat on prior trips in, because if the boat was further, then that shows premeditation potentially. But he was thinking she's going to go toward the boat, but the currents, that doesn't make any sense. I don't think that there's no way she was alive when she went out of that boat. I can see from pictures of these boats, it looks pretty shallow, but apparently they go very slowly. If this is the one, I mean, their knees are down, and it looks like maybe there's some places to hold on, but I don't, they go really slow. And unless the winds were really, really wild that night, I just don't see how someone's going to be bumped out. Apparently they go like 2 knots, which is like walking distance. Like you could probably run faster than that. So I'm just kind of confused about the statements. And I'm sorry, if my loved one has just bounced overboard, I'm freaking the F out. Okay. I am freaking out. I'm not going to be calm. I mean, shit, at that point, I might jump in and try to get them. Especially he had a life jacket, supposedly, that he threw to her. I don't know. I'm not feeling it. But unless there is digital evidence, this is very circumstantial at best. They're not going to find her remains at this point. Apparently, a body will swallow water and then they'll sink to the bottom. If she's not fish food, it could take a long time for a body to finally rise and be found. So I don't know. It doesn't look very good for him, considering he had started drinking again. There's tons of records of his violence. He actually lost relationship with his child for doing that, for choking, and was estranged from his own children because of that behavior. and just the anger. I know that the stepdaughter is hoping that it truly was an accident, but it just doesn't. And I'm sorry, 2 + 2 = 4. Okay. 2 + 2 = 4. He didn't just randomly have her fall over after he's threatened to push her off the boat before and has been physical. That just doesn't happen. People don't change. They don't change like that. And the over-explaining, and now there's a much more detailed story to the friends with flares. Sorry, it's just not adding up. The math isn't mathing, folks. So anyway, I don't know if how much I will continue covering. We'll just see what happens. Monday is tomorrow when the Bahamian police will either have to let him go or charge him. So we'll see what happens with that. I am still staying a bit on Nancy Guthrie. I am keeping an eye on it. There hasn't been any updates on Nancy Guthrie. So that's why I went ahead and picked this one up today, because doing a new story, you have to learn enough about it so that I can talk somewhat intelligently about it. And it took me a few days to figure out whether or not I wanted to go in this direction. But at this point, I'm very, very, very suspicious of Mr. Brian Hooker. And I think the biggest thing is going to be whether or not they actually have enough evidence to charge him. I think that's going to be the biggest question. So I do thank you so much for joining me for today's live content. Please make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, all of that stuff. I am Courtney C., your host, a 27-year veteran of the media. And until next time, I will catch you on the flip side.